Folks, it is fabulous to be back with all of you after 2 weeks of vacation. Grateful to Tom Broadbeck. Lauren Gunter did a great job filling in. I couldn't have become back, and I couldn't have come back at a better time because, well, that's when you want to be involved with the news. Thanks to a leak from a White House staffer, we now have a clear picture of what the U.S. government has been doing to watch out for terror threats. The National Security Agency has not only obtained data about Americans' phone communications, but their internet communications as well. Defenders of the program say it's designed to target foreign terrorists, and they take steps to protect Americans' privacy. Whether you support the program or not, it's easy to see why Americans would be upset. We'll talk about that later in the program with our good buddy David Martosco of the Daily Mail. I'm bringing it up now to make this one point. Yes, that is a scandal. The IRS singling out certain groups for extra scrutiny based on their politics, that too is a scandal. Editing talking points in the deadly attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi for the sake of obscuring the State Department's inaction, that's a scandal. The Department of Justice demanding phone records of journalists who have reported on leaks, that too is a scandal. But let's go to this country. A few senators cooking the books on their own expenses when the Senate rarely bothers to check and balance them. Well, compared to everything the U.S. government is dealing with, what we're dealing with here is small potatoes. So it's time for some Canadian common sense. While we're on the subject of potatoes, let's start with PEI Senator Mike Duffy, because he's the true public face of Senate spending problems right now. And look, I'm the first to tell you that Canadian taxpayers deserve to have their money spent wisely. It is absolutely his responsibility to repay improperly claimed expenses. That goes for Senators Pamela Wallin and Liberal Mark Harb as well. And I'd love to see more safeguards to ensure that senators have a lot less room to claim improper expenses. Personally, I don't care about the Senate. They could abolish it as far as I'm concerned. But throwing out the so-called honor system in which the red chamber simply assumes they're telling the truth on their forms, well, just throw out that honor system. That'd be a good start. But when the worst thing we can say about ethics here in Canada in the federal government is that a couple of senators claimed a few extra dollars, we're doing pretty well compared to our American neighbors. Okay, $90,000 that Duffy wasn't supposed to take. Think about this. Each Canadian paid 0.0027 cents for that one. That's it. We shouldn't have to pay that amount of money. It's a ripoff, even if it's just a fraction of a penny. But if we're going to talk seriously about this, let's talk about the numbers. Consider that each Ontarian will pay 10 times that much for the Liberal government's gas plant cancellations. That's a scandal. They still can't decide which story they're supposed to be telling about that one. But that doesn't stop the usual suspects, sufferers of what we would call HDC, Harper derangement syndrome, from trying to take this Senate scandal and making it much larger than it really is. The PM's chief of staff, Nigel Wright, took it upon himself to help out the senator with his expenses, writing him a personal check to cover them. Big mistake. Dumb move. Dumb politically, dumb ethically. And Wright has resigned to spare the PMO further embarrassment. But as far as the derangement syndrome is concerned, the Harper haters, they insist that their least favorite guy, the Prime Minister, that he was in on it, in on the conspiracy. Here's columnist Linda McQuaig, Toronto Star, quoting, "It seems likely that Harper either knew about the Duffy payment or had authorized Wright to handle dicey matters without telling him details, thereby assuring himself, quote, plausible deniability in case problems develop. But even if Harper didn't know about the payment, just as Bill Clinton didn't know Monica Lewinsky, there's still the question of where the $90,000 came from." Folks, nobody has produced evidence that Stephen Harper knew about any of this or that Nigel Wright used taxpayer funds to bail Duffy out. The best they can come up with was it was part of his job. Wright was in control of a fund, partly topped up by taxpayers, used to cover Harper's expenses as leader of the Conservative Party. All party leaders have a fund like that one, whether you think they deserve it or not. The point is, any accusation that Harper knew about Wright's specific payment is based on speculation and, to use a polite term for it, innuendo. Linda McQuaig innuendo. Until someone actually finds a smoking gun, not a smoking innuendo, but a real smoking gun with Harper's prints on it, real evidence, why bother trying to tie the Senate spending affair to his office? Yes, Harper derangement syndrome is part of that. But is there something else behind it? I want you to think about this. Are we actually, in a way, jealous of our American neighbors, jealous that American politics has never been rifer with outrage than it is right now? Because we really shouldn't be. When you think about what he and his cabinet could be getting up to, Harper has kept Canada's ship sailing quite smoothly. Think about our country's banking system. Before the global financial crisis, some people may have complained that our banks weren't allowed to take enough big risks and the economy didn't reap enough big rewards on gambling. But when the rest of the world heaped praise on us for our economic stability, that risk aversion, staying away from gambling, well, it didn't look like such a bad deal after all. The Canadian approach worked best. Overall, that's the approach Harper brings to the country. A bigger deal than the Senate deal. Whether you agree or disagree with him, whether you prefer more of a visionary in the Prime Minister's office, Canada is doing fine, really fine. Let's keep the Senate scandal in perspective. We Canadians ought to feel lucky that our latest federal scandal is so minor compared to what the Americans are dealing with. And we shouldn't be trying to pump it up into some sort of government-wide conspiracy until someone proves it's not a conspiracy, guilty until proven innocent. If that means our headlines are a little less shocking, a little less alarmist than they should be, well, much like the cost per Canadian of Mike Duffy's expenses, that's a small, very, very small price to pay. And that's Canadian common sense.